The little girl in the wheelchair was the first thing he noticed. Not the machines, not the smell of antiseptic and stale coffee drifting through the hospital corridor. Just the little girl sitting alone outside room 214 at nearly midnight, clutching a stuffed rabbit, with one missing eye while tears rolled silently down her cheeks. Jason Miller slowed to a stop. For a second, he forgot why he was there, forgot the exhaustion crushing his shoulders after 14 straight hours at the construction site, forgot the fear clawing at his chest because his 6-year-old son, Noah, had been admitted 2 floors above with a severe asthma attack. All he saw was a child trying not to cry alone. "You okay, sweetheart?" he asked gently. The girl looked up fast, like she wasn't used to anyone noticing her. "My mommy's dying," she whispered. The words hit harder than Jason expected. Children weren't supposed to say things like that so calmly. Jason crouched beside her. "Where's your family?" She shrugged. "Nobody came." That hurt even worse. The hallway lights buzzed, softly overhead while distant. Monitors beeped through the silence. The little girl wiped her face with the sleeve of her oversized hoodie. "She told me not to cry because it makes her tired," the girl said. "So I'm trying." Jason swallowed hard. He'd been raising Noah alone since his wife walked out 4 years earlier. He knew what loneliness looked like on a child's face, and this girl wore it like she'd known it forever. "What's your name?" he asked. "Ellie." "Well, Ellie," he said carefully, "I think your mom would want someone sitting with you." The girl stared at him for a long second before slowly nodding. Jason stood and pushed open the hospital room door, and realized immediately he'd entered the wrong room. The woman lying in the bed looked painfully thin beneath the white blankets. Dark hair framed a pale face too young to look that tired. Tubes and wires stretched from her arms, while a heart monitor blinked steadily beside her. But her eyes were warm. Surprised but warm. "Oh my God," Jason said quickly. "I'm sorry. I thought—" "It's okay," she interrupted softly. Her voice sounded weak but kind. Ellie rolled herself beside the bed. "Mommy, this man talked to me." The woman looked at Jason with something dangerously close to gratitude. "That already makes you more helpful than most people here," she said faintly. Jason almost smiled. Almost. Because then he noticed the chart hanging near the bed. Stage 4 inflammatory breast cancer. Terminal. His chest tightened. "You should probably be upstairs with your family," the woman said. "My son," Jason corrected quietly. "He's sleeping." "How old?" "6. A faint smile touched her lips. "Ellie's 7. She likes bossing people around." "I do not," Ellie protested. "You absolutely do." For the first time since Jason walked in, the room felt lighter. He should have left then. Should have apologized again and gone back upstairs to sit beside Noah. Instead, he stayed. Maybe because the woman looked exhausted in a way he recognized too well. Maybe because Ellie kept glancing between them like she was afraid he'd disappear too. Or maybe because some broken people recognize other broken people instantly. "My name's Jason," he said finally. "Claire." He sat for 10 minutes, then 30, then nearly 2 hours. Claire told him she used to teach 3rd grade before getting sick. Jason admitted he burned frozen waffles almost every morning trying to get Noah ready for school on time. Ellie laughed harder than she should have at that. By 2 a.m., Jason realized something terrifying. He didn't want to leave. Not because of pity, because for the first time in years, talking to someone felt easy, real, human. The next night, he came back. This time intentionally. He brought Ellie a new stuffed rabbit from the hospital. Gift shop because the old one was literally missing an ear now. Claire cried when she saw it. Not dramatic tears, the quiet kind people try to hide. "You didn't have to do that," she whispered. "I know." That became the beginning. Jason visited every night after work while Noah recovered upstairs. Then even after Noah was discharged, they still came back. Noah and Ellie became inseparable almost instantly. 2 lonely children finding each other in the middle of fluorescent hospital hallways. And somehow, Jason and Claire started doing the same. But there was one problem neither of them said aloud. Claire was dying. The doctors had made that painfully clear. The treatments weren't working anymore. One evening, Jason arrived to find Claire staring out the window while Ellie slept curled beside her. "You ever get scared?" Claire asked suddenly. Jason leaned against the wall. "Every day." "No," she whispered. I mean really scared. He understood immediately. The kind of fear that sits in your chest at 3 a.m. when nobody else can hear you breaking apart. Claire looked down at her hands. I'm not afraid of dying, she admitted quietly. I'm afraid of leaving her alone. Jason looked at Ellie sleeping beside the bed with one small hand wrapped around her mother's blanket. Something inside him cracked open. She won't be alone, he said before thinking. Claire looked at him carefully. You can't promise things like that? Yes, Jason said softly. I can. The room went silent. Because they both understood what he meant. Weeks passed. Then months. Claire got weaker, but somehow happier too. The nurses noticed it first. The woman who barely spoke before now smiled when Jason walked through the door. Ellie stopped crying in the hallways because she knew someone would always come back for her. And Noah started calling Claire Miss Claire with the fierce loyalty only children have. One snowy evening in December, Jason found Claire awake long after Ellie had fallen asleep. I need to ask you something, she said. You sound serious. I am. She reached shakily into the drawer beside her bed and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Legal guardianship documents. For Ellie. Jason stared at them without breathing. I don't have anybody else, Claire whispered. No parents. No siblings. Her father disappeared years ago. You don't need to do this tonight. Yes, she said firmly. I do. Her eyes filled with tears. I know what kind of man you are. Jason, I watched you love your son when nobody was watching. I watched you show up for a child you didn't even know. Jason looked away because his throat burned suddenly. I trust you with her. No one had ever said words that heavy to him before. Not in his entire life. And somehow that terrified him more than anything. A week later, Claire's condition crashed. Jason got the call at work. By the time he reached the hospital, nurses were rushing in and out of the room while Ellie sat curled in a chair, trembling violently. Jason crossed the room instantly and pulled her into his arms. She's scared, Ellie whispered. I know. She told me she might go to heaven soon. Jason closed his eyes. Then Claire looked toward him weakly from the bed. And smiled. Actually smiled. Hey, she breathed. He moved beside her immediately, holding her fragile hand carefully. You should be resting. No time, she whispered faintly. The monitor beeped steadily beside her. Claire looked between Jason and Ellie. Then she said the words nobody expected. Marry me. Jason froze. So did the nurse standing near the doorway. Claire gave the tiniest laugh. That sounded crazier out loud. Tears filled Jason's eyes instantly. Claire, I know I'm dying, she said softly. I know this isn't a fair thing to ask, but I don't want Ellie to feel abandoned when I go. I want her to know she still has a family. The room shattered inside him because she wasn't asking for romance. She was asking for peace, for safety, for her daughter. Jason looked at Ellie crying against his side, then back at Claire, and suddenly the answer felt obvious. He bent down carefully and kissed her forehead. Yes, he whispered. Claire broke into tears. The hospital chaplain married them 20 minutes later in that tiny room filled with machines and dim lights. Ellie held her mother's hand the entire ceremony. Noah stood beside Jason half asleep in dinosaur pajamas, and when the chaplain pronounced them husband and wife, Claire smiled like someone had given her one final miracle before the end. She passed away 3 days later, but she didn't die alone. Jason was holding one hand. Ellie held the other, and for the first time in a long time, Claire looked peaceful. The funeral was small. Cold rain fell while Ellie clung to Jason's coat and cried so hard she could barely breathe. After everyone left, she looked up at him with red, swollen eyes. Are you still my family? Jason dropped to his knees immediately. You're my daughter, he said firmly. Nothing changes that. Ellie threw her arms around his neck, and Jason cried with her right there in the cemetery. 2 years later, the house was loud again, not with grief, with life. Noah and Ellie chased each other through the kitchen while pancakes burned on the stove for the 3rd time that week. Dad, Ellie yelled dramatically. You're ruining breakfast again. Jason laughed despite himself. Some mornings still hurt. Some nights he still missed Claire so badly it felt physical. But love had stayed behind after her. In Ellie's laugh, in the framed hospital wedding photo hanging near the hallway, in the family they never expected to become. And every once in a while, when the house grew quiet late at night, Jason would look at that photograph and remember the strange twist of fate that changed all their lives forever. One wrong hospital room, one lonely little girl, one dying woman who simply needed someone kind enough to stay.